And now it's time for the story of Jerry, the narcissistic Christmas snow llama. Once upon a time, in a land not too far away from where you are right now reading this, there lived a sweet and loving family. There was David, the dad, Rachel, the mommy, and little daughter Sarah, who had diabetes. And living right in the middle of all that love was another special member of the family named Jerry, the narcissistic Christmas snow llama. Now the whole family, the whole town, even the whole world, it seemed, adored Jerry, and they all believed he was the most rare and wonderful llama who had ever lived, because he had been born on Christmas morning and his fur was the color of fresh Christmas fallen snow. But really it was just white fur, like any other llama. But no one else in town had ever seen another llama, so they all assumed Jerry was very special. Especially Jerry. But Jerry didn't really like anyone else very much at all. In fact, sometimes he hated everyone so much that it would make his nose bleed. He would dream of sneaking into all the homes on his street in the middle of the night and stealing away all their food and water and shoes. See, I told you, Jerry didn't like people very much at all. And especially at Christmas. Jerry really didn't like little Sarah at Christmas because she was always hugging his magnificent long neck and smashing her little snot-covered face into his beautiful fur, making it all sticky. It would make him so mad he would spit at little Sarah many times and hit her right in the forehead with a big splat of llama spit. And then Jerry would laugh. Jerry would laugh so hard. Little Sarah thought he was just being silly because she wasn't a very smart little girl, and she would wipe the hateful llama spit from her eyes and give Jerry a Christmas cookie. Oh, Jerry loved Christmas cookies more than anything. They were his favorite part of Christmas every year. And every year, Rachel, the silly mom with halitosis, would make a large plate of Christmas cookies just for Jerry. Jerry liked it when things were just for Jerry. Late one Christmas Eve, after Jerry had finished eating the plate of Christmas cookies that unattractive mommy had made for him, despite only having a GED and never having any formal cooking training or graduating from high school, he noticed little Sarah sit another plate of cookies near the fireplace, next to a note that read, "For Santa, love Sarah." Well, this made Jerry very unhappy indeed. Very angry deep down inside in his dark, ragey place. Why would Sarah do such a cruel thing? Jerry asked himself lovingly, full of compassion for himself. Why did she hate Jerry so? Was it because one of her eyes was slightly larger than the other and she wasn't as pretty as many other little girls Jerry had seen? Which meant she likely would never marry or be deeply loved like pretty little girls with eating disorders, so this made her feel the need to be so thoughtless to Jerry? Yes, that must be it, Jerry thought to himself. What a selfish little girl. Just like his mommy with the bad haircut, who picked little Sarah up and carried her up the stairs to tuck her into bed. As soon as they were both gone, Jerry walked over and stared at the note, frowning deeply to himself. He paused for just a moment, and then a warm Christmas llama smile started to appear on his classically, ruggedly handsome llama face, just before he slowly dragged his tongue across both cookies with a long, wet, slobbery lick. The cookies glistened with llama saliva from the Christmas lights, and then Jerry quickly disappeared and came back from the garage with antifreeze, which he poured into Santa's cup of hot cocoa. Now a real warm glow of satisfaction filled Jerry's heart, and he crawled into Daddy's recliner after taking 3 Xanax he found in Mommy's purse while searching for loose cash, and he drifted off to sleep. It wasn't long before he was awakened by what sounded like a morbidly obese idiot stuck halfway down the chimney. Someone who didn't know how walls and space worked. Oh, Santa was here. Careful not to make any noise, Jerry walked over to the fireplace, leaned his tail slightly over the small fire and pushed a cookie fart out, watching it drift up into the chimney before turning the gas dial to the fireplace all the way up to high. Jerry watched, mesmerized by the dancing flames, until he heard the word Santa had become so famous for declaring in every house for so many generations. Ho ho, holy Santa yelled in pain. The sound of what Jerry assumed were likely at least second-degree burns made him giggle to himself adorably as he hid behind the couch until Santa, patting out his smoldering suit, came stumbling through the back door like the drunken white trash he was. Santa had just sat his big bag of presents down and wiped the tears from his eyes when he spotted the plate of cookies and antifreeze cocoa sitting next to the still roaring fireplace. Munching down the 2 oddly wet cookies made Santa smile with renewed Christmas cheer, for cookies and food had always been the emotional and mental crutch that Santa needed, and this time was no different. He felt a smile cross his own chubby cheeks as he gulped down the last swallow of the funny-tasting hot chocolate. He had barely wiped his mouth with his bright red mitten when the first stomach convulsion hit him and made his tummy jiggle like a bowl full of diuretic jelly. WTF! Why the funny bodily noises? Santa wondered aloud, just as the next abdominal cramp doubled him over in pain so fast he lost his balance and fell backwards into the still roaring fire. Jerry felt his heart leap with delight and happiness as Santa rolled on the carpet, crying in pain and accidentally spreading the fire to the ugly curtains. Suddenly Jerry realized he was making a huge mistake. He couldn't just stand there and watch Santa Claus suffer and yell out like this and do nothing. Thinking quickly, Jerry dashed across the room, leapt onto Santa's chest, pushing out all the air and making it impossible for him to keep yelling and making noise, and reached his head high up towards the ceiling, stretching his long neck higher and higher into the air until finally, at last, Jerry pulled the batteries from the smoke detector. Breathing a sigh of relief, a truly wonderful idea suddenly occurred to him. Jerry knew this was real Christmas joy as he hurried excitedly up the stairs to put his plan into action. First, he snuck into Mom and Dad's room without waking them to find the credit cards and traveler's checks they had planned to use for the family Christmas Disney cruise. Next, he stopped by little Sarah's room to turn off a diabetic pump so no pesky insulin alarms would wake the family from their deep slumber. And then Jerry hurried back downstairs and shoved the Christmas turkey and a few other items into his knapsack, took the scissors from the utility drawer, and headed outside. Once there, Jerry castrated Santa's reindeer and left him with a note that said, "Merry Christmas, have some sausage balls," on the front porch of a neighbor named Will. Jerry never liked Will very much, because Will was an ass. Will owned a Tesla. Then Jerry happily headed into the woods towards a shortcut to the interstate in order to hitchhike to Canada, because they let anyone into Canada. But Jerry had only been in the woods a little while before it got very chilly and began to snow. Jerry started to get hungry, and even the smell of Rachel's dry, overcooked turkey was too much for him to resist. He'd only taken one bland, unflavored bite when he was startled by a loud howling from somewhere close to him. Then Jerry heard it again. And again. It was getting closer. Jerry closed his eyes and decided the howling wasn't fair and should therefore go away. But when he opened his eyes, he was surprised to see a pack of snarling, hungry wolves with fangs dripping and eyes glaring, ready to pounce and attack. Jerry backed away slowly, but looked back and realized that there was a cliff right behind him, and there was nowhere to go. He was trapped. The pack crept closer to Jerry, who quietly cursed his rugged good looks and natural body scent, which no doubt had lured the beast from their lair and overwhelmed them all with an insatiable llama lust which Jerry could see in their lonely eyes. And Jerry had forgotten his rape whistle. Just when all hope seemed lost and Jerry had begun to take off his Christmas sweater for the wolves, one of them leaned in and took a sniff at the turkey. Maybe Jerry could use this to his advantage. Moving slowly, and with seduction heavy in his eyes, Jerry held the turkey away from his own alluring breast, hoping to tease the wild animals into jumping at the turkey and falling off the cliff to the doom. But it didn't work. Instead, the predator canines, which Jerry could only assume were in the country illegally, lunged forward in a vicious attack. "Ah!" the llama cried, feeling the night air as claws tore into the turkey and accidentally messed up Jerry's hair. Jerry had spent 2 hours earlier that night getting his hair just right for Christmas pictures, and knowing all of that had been a waste filled him with a terrible anger. In fact, except for when Sarah touched him with her little filthy hands, Jerry had never known such rage, and he gave himself to the bloodlust, flinging himself into the battle. He was horribly mauled and unconscious, 4.33 repeating, of course, seconds later, with consciousness fading quickly from his deep brown, beautiful llama eyes. As he raised his noble, finely chiseled high cheekbone face up for one last look around, Jerry noticed his knapsack laying next to him and saw that the wolves were momentarily distracted by Rachel's turkey. In a final bid for freedom, Jerry spit into the eyes of his attackers and swung the heavy knapsack, still loaded with the toaster oven and Sony PlayStation Jerry had stolen from the home, still inside. It struck the momentarily blinded wolves hard, sending them flying over the cliff to the rocks below, along with the knapsack, credit cards, and traveler's checks Jerry would need to start his new life without Sarah. And with that, Jerry felt his eyes closing for what he believed would be the last, yet victoriously glorious time. Suddenly, he thought he heard a voice. "Jerry! Jerry!" What was this small, soft, shrill, annoying, horrible voice, yelling from someplace far away? Wait, he knew that voice. That stupid, horrible voice. He forced his tired eyes open once more, and there he saw it, Mummy and Daddy and little stupid Sarah standing above him with that same stupid smile on their faces. Each one of them coughing with black smoke stains covering their faces and the cheap clothes they had all bought from TJ Maxx. "Jerry, you're alive!" Sarah yelled in that voice that made Jerry try to roll himself over the cliff. He tried to spit at her, but his mouth was still too dry from the turkey. So instead, Jerry cursed them all silently in his head while they carefully carried him home and called for an ambulance in time to get him bandaged and send him back home again for Christmas. That morning, when little Sarah came running down the stairs for Christmas, she wrapped her arms back around his neck, accidentally pulling out his IV, and gave him a big hug, and surprised him. She had another big plate of Christmas cookies. "Merry Christmas, Jerry," she said in that voice that made him want to rip his own ears off and caused him to spit the biggest llama spit he had ever spit in his whole spitting life, right at Sarah, hitting her right in the forehead and sending her falling backwards into the Christmas tree. Mommy and Daddy laughed because they weren't very intelligent. Mommy and Daddy laughed warmly with Sarah as they helped her back to her feet and handed her a large wad of paper towels to wipe the hateful llama spit from her eyes. "Aw, Jerry, you're so silly," Dumb Dad David said as they all laughed together as one big, happy, stupid family. Jerry, still unhappy and broken-hearted, looked down at the floor because the sight of them all made him just feel carsick and want to cut himself. Just then, he happened to notice little Sarah's diabetic pump was still turned off. A sly grin appeared on Jerry's ruggedly handsome face as he lowered his head, nudged the plate over, and for the first time in his entire llama life offered that irritating little girl a cookie. And then 7, until little Sarah fell asleep on the kitchen floor. Feeling a warm glow of satisfaction, Jerry turned the morphine drip up on his IV and headed back to bed for the rest of the day. He had only just begun to feel really good when the sound of Mommy Rachel screaming almost caused him to open his eyes. From the sound of the 911 call Jerry overheard, they had just found Santa behind the couch, covered in third-degree burns and barely clinging to his empty, pathetic life of white privilege. Moments later, Jerry, barely recognizing the sounds of the life flight chopper arriving on the roof to fly Santa to the nearest burn center, felt himself drifting deeper into a cozy Christmas sleep. He smiled as he pictured himself waking bright and early the next morning to sneak that enormous bag of Santa's presents he had stashed in the basement over to Larry's pawn shop for his New Year's Eve weed money. And that's exactly what he did. Which is where our story ends, boys and girls. The story of how Jerry, the narcissistic Christmas snow llama, saved Christmas and made sure everyone, but mostly him, had a very Jerry Christmas and a llama-ful Happy New Year. The end.